Hello everyone! In this section of the course, we are going to learn about user roles and permissions. First, we will review the way that WordPress handles roles and permissions by default, right out of the box. And then after that, we will learn how to customize WordPress to operate exactly the way that we want it to. So without further ado, right now let's jump into an example of why roles and permissions are so important in the first place. So a lot of larger websites require a team effort. One single person cannot handle creating, inputting, and updating all of the content. So let's imagine that we have a coworker that's going to help us manage this university site. So we need to get them access to the admin dashboard. Now, some people just share their main admin username and password with everyone on their team, but that is a potential security nightmare. Ideally, we want each person on a project to have their own unique username and password account. So follow along with me right now. Let's go create a brand new account for our hypothetical coworker. So to create a new user account, you can either hover over New up in this top admin bar and then choose User, or if you just jump into the main admin dashboard, down towards the bottom of the sidebar we see Users and then choose Add New. So first we need to choose a username. Feel free to make up whatever username you want, but I'm going to pretend that my cat is my coworker that's going to help me manage the site. So Kitty Doe. Then we need an email address. If you have an alternate email address that is different from your main admin account, you can use that here. Or, since we are really only doing this as a test, you could enter a really long fake gibberish email, but I would only do that if this website is only ever going to live on your local host. If you're working on a real website that you would someday like to push up live onto the internet, then I recommend spending the time to create a real email address that we can use here. Okay, then these next three fields are optional. We can leave them blank. Okay, and the next thing I want to draw our attention to is the password. By default, WordPress will generate its own random password for the user and then send it via email. But in this case, I don't want to have to worry about retrieving an email, so you can just click Show Password, and then just feel free to type in and create whatever password you can easily remember. Alright, and finally, perhaps the most important thing on this screen is the role. By default, out of the box, WordPress offers us these 5 choices. A subscriber basically cannot do anything. All they can do is manage their own profile info, so things like their own first name and last name. One level above a subscriber is a contributor. A contributor is someone who can create a rough draft for a post or page, but they can't actually publish it so that the entire world can view it on the website. And then one level above that is an author. Authors are allowed to sign in and actually create and publish content live up onto the website for the whole world to see. However, an author can only make changes to a post if they are the ones that created it in the first place. An author cannot change someone else's content. An editor, however, can. An editor can not only create their own content, but they also have permission to edit and delete other people's posts and pages. And then finally, an admin has full, complete access to do whatever they want to the website. And even if you completely trust someone, you might not want to make them an administrator unless they are fairly tech savvy, because it gives them the potential to really mess up a website. So let's imagine that we invite our coworker to be an editor. So I chose the editor role and then just click Add New User. And there we see the new account. Now let's go ahead and try to log in as that new user account. There's actually no need to log out of our main admin account. Instead, what we can do is just open up a new private browser window. So in Google Chrome, that's referred to as a new incognito window. So within this new window, if we visit our website's URL, for me that's localhost 3000, you can see that even though I'm logged in as the admin within my main browser window that's using my normal browser mode, because this is using private mode, we can log into a completely separate account. So right now, WordPress considers this window a stranger, but if we just go to /wp admin, well, then we can log in as that new user account. Cool. So since this user is an editor and not an administrator, they don't have access to screens like appearance, plugins, or settings, but they do have full access to all 6 of our post types, right? Blog posts, pages, campuses, events, programs, and professors. And if that's what you want this coworker to be able to manage all of the post types, then you could almost stop here and this lesson is over. However, in the real world, you don't always want to give someone editor access to all post types. So as an example, let's imagine that we only want this coworker to be able to manage the event posts. So basically, we want this user to be an event planner and nothing more. So the question becomes, how do we only give them access to that one post type? Well, the answer is that we can just create our own brand new role. So out of the box, WordPress starts with those 5 roles we saw a moment ago: subscriber, contributor, author, editor, and admin. And you and I can just create a brand new custom role and give it only the exact permissions that we want. So how do we go about creating a brand new role? Well, if you know me, you know that I always try to use as few of plugins as possible. However, there is a user roles and permissions plugin that is just so perfect and makes life so much easier, I can't help but recommend it. It's completely free and it's an industry standard, so let's go install the plugin right now. So back in my main window where I am the admin, let's hover over plugins and then click add new. Okay, then in the top right corner, let's search for members. The plugin that I'm interested in is not even in the first row of results. Instead, it's this one, where the title is simply the word members. If you want a more specific search to pull it up as the first result, you can try searching for members Justin Tadlock, which is the name of the developer. Cool. So now the desired plugin is the first result. You can see it's got a perfect rating. It has over 100,000 installs, and most importantly, it's created by Justin Tadlock, who is a big voice in the WordPress developer community. I have nothing but positive things to say about this plugin, so let's go ahead and install it right now. And once that completes, then let's click activate. All right, and now let's get back to the task at hand. Let's create a new custom user role that can only manage the event post type. So thanks to the plugin that we just installed, if we hover over users in the sidebar, we now see roles and add new role. If you click on roles, you can see all of the roles that you currently have. At the moment, we just have the default 5 that WordPress comes with. And instead of modifying any of these, let's just create a brand new role. So in the sidebar under users, let's click add new role. We can name this role whatever we want. The name does not matter, but I'm going to call it event planner, since the only thing I want this role to have access to is the event post type. Okay, and as you can see, we simply grant or deny this new role different permissions and abilities. We are currently viewing the tab for general capabilities, but if we wanted to grant this role permission to create blog posts, we could click on this. Or for the page post type, we could click on pages. However, we noticed that we don't see a tab for our custom post types, right? Things like events, campuses, programs, and professors. And this is because by default, when it comes to permissions and capabilities in WordPress, custom post types are treated like generic blog posts. Meaning if we clicked on to posts and checked the boxes to grant permission to this new role, that would actually also grant permission to our 4 custom post types. Because new custom post types, by default, inherit the permissions and abilities from generic blog posts. So what we need to do right now is go and edit the code where we registered the events post type. So over in your text editor, instead of your theme folder, I want you to jump into the MU Must Use Plugins folder. And within this file where we registered our different post types, let's scroll down until we find event. And we basically just want to tell the event post type that it should not behave like a blog post when it comes to permissions and capabilities. Instead, it should require its own unique permissions and capabilities. So maybe right before this supports line, let's just add a brand new line, and let's say capability type, and let's set it to equal event. Be sure to include a comma at the end. Now without this line, sort of the unspoken context in WordPress is that capability type is post by default, which means as long as you have the permissions required to create a blog post, you also have the permissions to create an event. So by setting this to something unique, like event, well, now we need to explicitly grant these custom event permissions to each role as we see fit. Or actually, I should say that this line of code creates new unique capabilities for event, but then in order to actually enforce and require these permissions, we need a new line where we say map meta cap, which stands for capabilities, and set that to equal true. Without this line of code, we would need to program our own custom logic for when these new capabilities should be required. So for example, if you were building some weird, crazy website that defied all normal logic, maybe for some weird reason you would want to set things up so that on the 4th day of the month, if your username starts with the letter S, then everyone on the website is allowed to edit events. That's how flexible WordPress is. It would allow you to set something like that up. But most of the time we do not need that. So this line of code is our way of just saying, hey WordPress, can you please reasonably require event-related permissions in order to edit and manage event post types? Can you require the right permission at the right time in a sane fashion for us automatically? Okay, so it's going to automatically map and require the right capabilities at the right time. Cool, now let's go ahead and save this, and with these 2 lines of code in place, if we jump back into the admin panel and refresh this screen where we were trying to create a new role, since I refreshed, it looks like I need to type in the title again, so I will say Event Planner. But thanks to that new code that we just wrote, we now see a tab for events. So we can click on that, and let's just go ahead and grant our Event Planner role all of these permissions. So they can create their own events and they can edit and delete other people's events. All right, then let's be sure to click Add Role to save our progress. And now let's go edit our coworker's account to assign them this new role. So in the sidebar under Users, I will click All Users. Here's my KittyDough coworker account. Click on that. Scroll down to the very bottom and we see this Roles area. So I'm just going to deselect Editor and then choose Event Planner. Go ahead and update that. And then back in my private window, this is the window where I'm logged in as the coworker. I used to have access to all of the post types, but now as soon as I refresh, I only have access to events. Perfect. And why don't we go ahead and test it out really quick. So if I try to add a new event, maybe give it a title of Math Party, Lorem Ipsum Dummy Text. Let's set the event date for September 2020. It doesn't need a subtitle, but let's be sure to relate this program to math, since I called it Math Party. Okay, and then if I go ahead and publish that, and then pull up the front end of the website, and search for math, cool, there we see under Events, Math Party. So things are working perfectly. However, back in our main window, where we are logged in as the admin, you might have noticed that we no longer see events in our sidebar. And that's because we only explicitly granted event permission to the event planner role. But we probably also want to grant it to the administrator role. So let's do that right now by looking under the user's sidebar and clicking roles. And then let's edit the administrator role and click on events, and then go ahead and grant all of the capabilities. Let's go ahead and update that. And sometimes you need to refresh the page again, but once I do, you can see I now have access to events again as the admin. Perfect. Now, before we bring this lesson to a close, I want to cover something that blew my mind when I first learned about it. And that is that the Members plugin makes it super easy to assign multiple roles to a single user. The reason this is so cool is you can create a bunch of different super specific roles, and then depending on the coworker that you want to invite into your project, you can combine the roles to create the perfect recipe for their unique set of responsibilities. So let me give you an example. We've already created the event planner role. Now let's go create another new role named Campus Manager. So that would be someone who can only manage the campus post type. I know this might seem a bit repetitive, but practice makes perfect. So to set that up, first, let's go back into our text editor, and within the file where we register all of our different post types, let's scroll down and find campus. Actually, for me, I think it's up at the very top. And anywhere in this associative array, let's just add on capability type equals, and it doesn't need to match what the post type name is, it just needs to be something unique. But just to make sense, I'm going to say campus, comma, and then let's also say map metacap equals true. Okay, now as soon as I save that, we can go back into the admin dashboard and create a brand new role. So to do that, under the user's sidebar, let's click add new role. Let's name it Campus Manager. Thanks to the code that we just wrote, we see a Campuses tab here. Let's click that. Let's grant all of the capabilities. And then click Add Role. Okay, and now if we invited a second or third or fourth coworker into the project, we could obviously assign them the Campus Manager role. But what I think is super cool is we can also give this role to our existing KittyDough account. So under Users, if we click All Users and click on the coworker account that we created at the beginning of this lesson, scroll down to the very bottom, and maybe we want this user to be an event planner and a campus manager. So when I first found out that you could combine multiple roles, I was so excited because for the longest time you could do this in other content management systems, but there was no super easy, intuitive way of doing it in WordPress. So let's go ahead and click Update User. And then back in my other private window where I am logged in as the coworker, if I go back into the admin panel and refresh, I now also have access to campuses. This might not seem that cool or like that big of a deal at first, but trust me, it opens up the door to an infinite number of possibilities. You can create as many different roles as you need to, and then perfectly mix and match and combine them on a user-by-user basis, which I think is super useful. Now, before we close this lesson out, just because practice makes perfect, remember that what we just did will remove the campus abilities from the admin. And I like to make sure that my admin always has full access. So just go back into roles, edit the administrator, and just make sure to give it campus permissions or campus capabilities. Cool. Now you might need to manually refresh, but as soon as I do, you can see Campuses is back in business for admins. And that will bring this lesson to a close. In our next lesson, we will learn how to set up open registration so that anyone can come to our website and sign up for a new account. Now at first, the account won't have permissions or capabilities to do anything, but in future lessons, we will learn how to give them special little abilities that will not hurt the security of our site. So let's keep things rolling, and I will see you then.